Hi everybody, it's Jenny from the Missouri Star Quilt Company, and I've got a fun project for you today. Take a look at this quilt behind me. Look at this, isn't this beautiful? I know you guys have to be wondering, I've cut up so many other things. When am I going to cut up a Dresden? Well, that's just what we did with this. We decided that we were going to cut up a Dresden and see what happened. And this is the result. We're calling it Dresden squared, and I just think it looks awesome. So let me tell you how to do this. So to make this quilt, what you're going to need is one packet of 10-inch squares. We've used the Burlap Brights by Benertex. Just beautiful, happy colors in there. We love them. You're also going to need 1.5 yards. That's going to be for your sashing and your circles. You're going to need about 1 yard of interfacing that's fusible on one side for the backing of your circles. And then for your border, you're going to need about 1 yard of fabric for that. This makes a quilt that is 43 by 52. So it's just a great little size, you know, good lap quilt, good crib quilt, but really a fun quilt. So let me show you how to do this. Okay, so to make this quilt, basically we're going to make a Dresden plate. And how we're going to do that is we're going to take 2 of our squares, and you're going to want some contrast in those squares. I've got this nice blue right here, and I've got this orange. And we're going to line these 2 up and cut them in half, just like this. So I'm going to put my ruler here on the edge and just cut these in half. And then what we're going to do is we're going to stack these like this. So then what we need to make a plate is we need 20 blades. So then you're going to use your Dresden template, and you're going to cut out 10 blades of each color. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay mine right along the edge like this. And then I'm just going to rotate my mat and cut it on this side again. We're going to cut this edge off over here. There we go. We have to cut this one little edge off. And then over here, we're going to flip this. And then we're going to put this. Just keep going along your whole row. I'll scoot these apart so you can see what I'm doing here. And you just move your blade back and forth, and that will help you to, you'll never have to like keep lining it up. You'll just be able to move it back and forth. All right, so this is our little bit of waste. That's all there is. That's pretty good. And now what we're going to do is we've got to sew these together to make a plate. So we're going to take our 2 pieces like this, and we're just going to put them right sides together. We're going to line up those edges, and we're just going to sew 1/4 inch down. Now I can take this whole stack with me over to the sewing machine. They're already set up with, with the light and darks together. So you're just gonna go ahead and sew 1/4 inch seam here, right along the edge. And it'll be really helpful if your same color is always on the top. And you can just chain piece them through like this. So then I'll get my orange one, I put my blue right on the top. Just like this, and just keep chain piecing them through. And you're going to do this to your whole stack of them. Once you get your 2s all sewn together, then you're going to start sewing them together in 4s. So then we'll lay them like this. And we'll just put them this way and sew them together in 4s. So you'll start by sewing 2s, then you'll sew 4s, pretty soon you're sewing 8s, and then you'll sew 10s together, and you'll end up with a Dresden plate like this that is 20 blades. And then we're going to head to the ironing machine, and we're going to iron this right down nice and flat, just like this. And you do want to lay this nice and flat. And a shot of steam will generally do that. Now you'll notice we haven't had to sew any of the edges of this Dresden at all. We're just sewing straight blades together just like this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on my board and make sure that it's centered on there. And then this is really helpful to have an 8.5-inch ruler because that is the biggest square you can get out of this. I'm going to make sure that my ruler is centered up with the hole in the center and my square centered up on my Dresden plate. And then we're just going to cut these edges off just like this. Turn it, cut the edge, turn it, cut the edge, and turn it. Just like that. And you get Dresden squared. So now we need to do a little circle for the center, and let me just tell you how I do that. What I do is I draw the size I want on a background square, and then I take my fusible web, and this is fusible on one side only, and I put it right sides together, and I'm going to sew on that circle all the way around. So let me do that. You know, there's lots of ways out there to make circles. This is just one of the ways that to do it, and I like to do this one this way when I'm sewing because when you flip this inside out, you'll be able to iron it down and it will hold into place. So then what we're going to do is we're just going to trim around this like this. Just straight trimming around. Give you about 1/4 of an inch or, you know, 1/8 of an inch, whatever you want. Just make sure you don't clip those stitches. Then we're going to pull these apart like this. So you've got your fabric on one side and you've got your interfacing on the other. And I'm going to clip a little X in there. And I'm going to cut to almost to the edges on 4 sides. So just like this, I've cut through. And then I'm just going to flip it right side out like this. Just like this right here. Run my fingernail along the edge of it to make sure that it stays nice and round. And then you can just take this and iron this onto the center of your square. Now you can see I've got a line here. I didn't exactly sew on my sew line right there, and so probably you want to make sure that when you draw your line on your fabric, it's on the inside so it doesn't show. So let's just take one of these right here that doesn't have the line, and we'll iron that onto the center. Now, because this is going to go through on this side, you can put a piece of freezer paper or something like that underneath it, or just touch the bare edges of it to hold it on. Either way works. So I'm just going to touch the edges of this to hold it on, because I don't really want to adhere it to my pressing mat. That would not be good. So we just want to kind of tack it on there, make sure it stays, and then we can go to the sewing machine and stitch it down. And I just like to do that blanket stitch around the edge. And so we're going to blanket stitch all the way around the edge of this. And I believe I have one that's finished here. Let me get it real quick. So here's these right here. And you can see I used some darker threads so that you'd be able to see that. Well, once you get that done, I mean, that's your whole block. It's done, ready to go, and you get to lay it out. So basically, we're laying these out. Let me scoot this over here. We're laying these out, we're going to put a sashing row in between them. So we take from our background fabric, and we're going to cut some 1.5 inch strips, and we're going to sew that sashing right to the strip and sew our blocks together just like this. Pretty soon you'll have a unit that looks like this, and you're going to do this in rows. So let's take a look at this. We've got 4 across, and you'll put your sashing in between each row, and you've got 5 down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 20 blocks makes this size of a quilt, and then you're going to run your sashing in between each row, and you're going to border the entire thing also. So you'll probably need about 1.5 yards for that, and it just comes together so quickly and nicely. So, so let me just show you this part right here. I was a little worried about this right here. this felt a little wasteful to me, and I wasn't sure that I liked the idea of cutting it off and not using it. So I decided that I would iron some heat and bond to the backs of these, and I would use it in a border and see what happens. So I want to show you. I did this little runner right here where I used 4 blocks and I incorporated it into the border. And so it's just another way of using those leftovers so that you don't have any waste. Makes a fun block because there's an 1.5 inch sashing between your blocks. You're going to need an 1.5 inch between your little curved pieces, but they're going to fit right in there. I just ironed them on, and again, just blanket stitched right around the top of them and made this cute little border. So we hope you enjoyed this tutorial on the Dresden Squared from the Missouri Star Quilt Company. And we are going to lay our Dresden template on here. Oh, you're also going to need one of these. Oh my gosh.